the biggest dude at the gym. I was like, I'm the fucking shit. And then I'd have clients be like, oh, like I'm really struggling with my session. And I'd be like, you're a fucking pussy. You need to fucking lock in.
And welcome back to Bars Loaded Podcast with Ben and Nick. You, like, while you're sitting here looking at me, I feel like that's too intimate.
Look in my eyes.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm pretty.
Yeah. I'll say all the nice things. I'll say all the nice things about you when you're not present, and you can listen back afterwards.
Fair enough.
Thanks for taking time out of posting like a boomer on Instagram to speak to us.
Of course. I would want nothing more than to speak to two Australians.
I know that takes up quite a lot of your time responding to all of the comments.
Dude, the thing is like I'm on my phone 9 hours a day anyways because of my clients. So it's just like notification, respond, client, respond, notification, respond. And I probably have like an iPad baby brain now in some form of, ADHD or something, but it's filtered quite comfortably into my life. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Would you be a powerlifting coach if you didn't though?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like, there's none of us are normal.
No, and that's the funny thing too is like there's like two types of people who like end up as powerlifting coaches, which is like people who started out like in-person personal training and they're like, I don't really want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for a client anymore. And then there's people who are like, I'm really strong and I'm going to get clients. And then because the people are like, I'm really strong and I'm going to get clients, and they don't have a fucking work ethic, because they work at Walgreens or something. And they're like, I don't know when my coaching business isn't going well. I was like, oh, because you've never, outside of the gym, you've never worked hard for anything in your entire life. So this is where we're at.
Yeah.
Whereas like this work rate compared to, 45 or 48 in-person PT hours a week, I'm like, this is nothing. I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you touched on, I wanted to talk to you about the WhatsApp messaging and kind of the way that you have structured your business. From what I can tell from the outside looking in and the information that you've put online, and also speaking to the client that we were just speaking about prior to pressing record that both of us know, I've asked him about, how is it, and, what are some of the benefits and the positives and negatives that he's come across. And he said, the biggest positive that he's got probably the most out of is the instant responses, the feedback, like in the moment, always coaching, send me videos right away, and not that like once a week check in. Here's me reviewing 400 videos from the last week, try and remember all of that and go and implement it for this week. And I'll talk to you again next week. How did you come across that? Because it's something that, one, I really admire and have modeled my coaching business around that philosophy as well, and have seen drastic improvements in my clients since doing so also. One, I guess, like, how did you come across doing that? Why did you start doing it? And like, what are some of the benefits that you're seeing with that?
Yeah, so it literally started because the first coach I had, who was like he was a big 275. I hired him for like a meet prep in 2016, and it was like the most inconvenient thing of all time. I had to like upload videos into a Google Drive, and then I'd send him an email on Saturday when they were uploaded, and then on Sunday night I'd get like 2 paragraphs back on things to fix. I was like, this is horrible. Like this is the worst thing of all time. And the coach that I had immediately after him, because I literally like I only hired this guy for meet prep, and I was like, this guy's a dud. Like he's a total non-starter. And the coach that I went with afterwards, like it was really funny because we had met at a meet. We had met at my first meet, and I had made the decision to go untested. And I was always like asking him questions and stuff. And he was like, dude, he's like, you're getting way too strong, way too fast. He's like, you're going to fucking hurt yourself. Can you just let me coach you? And he's a very, like, his name is Paul O'Need, and he's a very, very, very good coach. And I was with Paul for 5 years. And that's just how Paul ran his business, because he had a full-time desk job, but it was work from home. And I was a personal trainer at the time, so I'd be training in the middle of the day. So he's just at his desk with his Facebook open. I'd send him Facebook videos of me training, and he would just respond when he got them because he was at his computer anyways. So for me, that was just like, I was like, oh, this is just what you're supposed to do. And then I was like, okay, well, there's got to be a way to like optimize within the system. Like, I don't want all of my clients to have me on Facebook because I post some pretty unhinged shit. So how can I have like a little bit more of a professional side to this? And I was like, oh, WhatsApp. WhatsApp doesn't kill video quality. Android and iPhone get along on WhatsApp, so we'll just do WhatsApp. And it obviously gives you voice notes. It gives you the ability to send back videos, and it was just like, it was everything that I needed. And then now with the WhatsApp business function, you can send away messages. Like it's really, really convenient. And then you have WhatsApp web, and you can have it on your computer as well. So it's like all of the functionality is there. And then the beautiful thing too is because it's on my computer, like I have all of those videos archived on my computer. So I can go back and look at the last 6 months, 8 months, 9 months of training of videos and be like, okay, well, this last week we hit this for our top set, a little bit overshot. So here's the weight range for this week. We're going to drop it back a bit. And it just made sense to me. And the thing that never ever made sense to me about like the once a week check-in model was the fact that you're essentially ruining a day of the week, right? You're like, I'm going to do all of my work on Sunday and I'm going to get up at 7 a.m. and I'm going to work until 10 p.m. because I have 50 clients and I have to go over 1,000 videos. And then in actuality, like if that's the way that you're doing things, unless you are the most honest person of all time, you're probably not looking at anything other than the main work, in which case, right? Because eventually people are going to get corners. And so it's like, okay, we can probably like, I know how I am as a person. If I just sit in front of a computer for 10 hours, I'm probably going to start to slack. Whereas if I have to talk to a client for 25 minutes while they're training to get them to their main work and onto their accessories, that's a lot more digestible for me. And my level of service is going to be higher. And in actuality, I do think that my time spent over the week is a lot less because in actuality, all I have to do on the Sunday morning is get up and I have one bad week of the month where it's like I have like 28 programs, but I'm typically averaging like 10 to 15 a weekend. And it's like I get up, I have my coffee and I'm done my programs by the time we leave for church at like 11 a.m. Right. And it's like, and then it's done. And that's the only work I have throughout the week. And then I have my phone on me. And when I'm not available, there's an away message put up. If something happens, I have all of my clients on an email list. Like, it just made the most sense to me, and it allowed me to be able to live my life in a way that was congruent with still servicing my clients.
Wait, so you can set away messages on WhatsApp Business?
Yes, I'll show you how to do it.
Does it send them a message back?
Immediately, yeah.
What if you're in a group chat? Does it send the group chat a message?
I don't know. I don't have a group chat.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, it's very convenient.
That's super convenient. Yeah, I like that. Cool. Okay, so I like that. Take us back. We've kind of skipped ahead, but take us back to young Stu. How did you find the gym? Why did you find the gym? What kind of sparked your love for it? Why did you keep training? And then how did that lead into coaching?
Yeah. So I grew up in Canada. I'm Canadian. And I played football in high school. So for you guys, it would be like, you don't have Canadian football or American football in Australia. You have rugby and rugby league, but
we have a little bit now. It's just not super popular.
Okay. So it's essentially just like rugby league with equipment. That's the easiest way to think about it. I played in grade 9 and grade 10, and then I got into grade 11. And obviously, like, the kids have now hit puberty, so everyone's bigger, and I wasn't bigger. And I got, like, fucking bullied. And I was like, dude, this is bullshit. And then I finished the season, and my buddy was like, dude, like, I have, because he wanted to get bigger too. He's like, I have this, like, Joe DeFranco program, and it's called Westside Barbell for Skinny Bastards. Like, maybe we should do this. I was like, okay. Like, it's already written out. I'll do it. In that off season, I think I started the off season at like 72 or 73 kilos. And the next fall when I started football. Like I was like 96, 97 kilos.
Nice.
And the best part is I hit puberty when I started training because I was a late bloomer. And I was like, oh, this is sick. And then I ended up going to play football in university. I played football in university in first year, and then I ended up playing 2 years of rugby union in university, and then I was the captain of the men's team in second year, or in my second year of playing rugby, so third year of uni. And then because I got a bigger scholarship for football, I went back to play football, and then I was done that. I was like, okay, well, I've kind of done this, but I've trained all throughout, and I was always like the strong kid on the team. And I was like, okay, so maybe I should just do a sport that's just the lifting part because I'm good at that. And I did my first meet. I was like 21. I think I totaled like, I don't know, like 700 kilos or something. And I was like, okay, this is sick. And I went like 5 for 9 because I was just a total dumbass. I was like the worst attempt selection of all time. Like I think my third attempt was 265 kilos and I opened at 255 kilos. Just like just total shit for brains. Like no idea what's going on. And then after that, I made the decision to go the untested route. And then I had the coach that I had for a very long time, Paul O'Need. And then I was graduating school at that time. And then literally I competed 1 year later to the date. And my total went from like 700 to 842.5 in a year. And I was like, dude, this is sick. I'm really good at this. And so I had started working full time at a big box gym at that point. And so now like training was like everything I did because I was training people, 40, 45 hours a week. I had my own training and then I just progressed on that. And then I ended up taking like a pretty significant amount of time off, like from 2018 to 2021. Like I didn't compete. And then when I came back in 2021 to compete, like I'd always been 100. I'd always been a 125. And like the first meet I came back because I had like lost a bunch of weight. I think I weighed in at like 105 kilos. And I was like, and I'm 6'1", like I'm not short. So I was like fucking skinny. Like when I played sevens, that was my playing weight in sevens. So I was like, I'm fucking skinny. And then did that first meet back, did terribly because I was skinny. I think I totaled maybe like 805. And just started. So I was like, okay, well maybe I can do something with this. And then a whole bunch of other shit happened, got married, moved countries, got back into powerlifting. Finally, like 4 years and 6 months later, I set a PR total with 845 in December of 2023. And I was like, and that's why like I kind of tell my clients to not fucking quit and give up. And I was like, listen, fine. It was 5 years for 5 pounds. Shut up about you not having a bench PR every month.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like back into competing consistently, and I compete again in 11 days, I think. And I'm aiming I should total like the range is probably like 885 to 890. So, and then I got another meet at the end of the year.
Nice.
But yeah, that's training for me. That's my whole history of training.
How did so obviously you're sort of talking about like 5 years for a 5 pound PR.
Yeah.
Was it just the lack of consistency that sort of like limited that, or was it just what was the sort of the main point sort of holding you back from that?
I went through the fucking ringer. That was the point. So a month out from that meet in 2018, I broke my back. So I fractured and herniated L3, L4, L5. And I had something called cauda equina, which is I lost bladder control. So just like uncontrollably pissed myself at work when I went to hinge over to grab something. And I had to like bring extra underwear to work. And I was like, I'm not a fucking pussy. Mama didn't raise a bitch. And I just took more D-ball. I was like, I'm just going to up the D-ball. And I was taking like an ungodly amount, an amount that I will not mention on this because I don't want anyone to get any bright ideas. And I competed anyways. And I think I squatted 325, benched 192.5. And then by the grace of God, somehow I was able to pull 325 with my left leg completely numb. And then that was a full year of rehab getting back from that. And then I was like, I'm going to do a prep and wraps now that I'm healthy. May 2019, tore my left quad, rehab from that. September 2019, tore my right quad, rehab from that. January 2020, tore my pec, rehab from that. And then COVID happened. And then I was prepping for a meet November 2020. And then I literally went nuts. Like I ended up having like a super long manic episode and got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I actually went nuts. And then I had to like obviously stop the super supplements because that's not good for your brain. And came back from that. And then I met my wife February 2021. And then I was like, I want to maybe see if I can do another meet. And then that was that meet I did in November 2021. And then 2022 was like a whole bunch of crazy stuff. And then we moved here end of 2022. And we've been here since like December 26, 2022. And so now I have some like stability and normalcy and I'm not hurt. So now I'm competing again.
How did you break your back?
I stood up too fast with a warm up. I remember it. So I stood up with, it was 255. And I stood up and it popped off my back. And then when it came back down, I felt like this big crunch in my low back. And I always had a bad habit of wearing my belt too tight. And it was just, I was in this extension posture and the bar came up. And when it came back down, it was like crunch. And I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good at all. And so like I racked it and then I did the rest of the workout. And then I got into the car and I remember like I had I was sitting in the front seat and I had my hands on my legs texting. And I couldn't feel my left leg. And I was like, that's funny. And I remember I got home and I went to the bathroom and I was sitting on the toilet and I went to stand up and I like couldn't push off my left leg. And I was like, odd. And then like the next time I went to go to the bathroom, I like went to sit down in the toilet and I like started peeing before I had sat down in the toilet. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And then like I went and they were like, oh yeah, you fucked yourself up. And I was like, so can I do the meet? And they're like, so really? So you're saying there's a chance?
So how much D-bol do I need to take to get through this?
Yeah. And it was horrible. Like I competed I graduated university the day after that meet. Like the meet was on a Saturday and I graduated on the Sunday. And I must have been in acute kidney failure. Like it was so bad. Like, dude, I had jaundice, like my eyes were yellow and like my pee was frothy. And I was like, I have really fucked myself up here. Like, this is not smart. I'm a very stupid person. And then I forgot about that pretty quickly. And then but yeah.
Fuck, yeah. That's intense.
Yeah. Looking back on it, I'm like, oh, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough.
Yeah, just go all in, which it kind of ties into something else that I wanted to talk to you about. So I've followed you and kind of like your journey for a decent amount of time now. Also along with one of your friends, I believe, fellow Canadian, Seth, who, and both of you guys have had fairly significant injuries close to meets and been able to continue through, train around that and still perform at the meet. So late last year, I actually completely tore my adductor 4 weeks out from GPC Nationals, which one of your clients, Kevy, also competed at.
Yep.
And wasn't able to peak at all. It was literally my deload week prior to starting the peak. Wasn't able to squat at all. Turned up to the meet thinking I was just going to squat the bar and collars so that I could try and pull for a PR, and ended up squatting a 2.5 kilo PR on the day. And that is the beauty of peptides and and doing your rehab work, which is also something that I've heard you speak about on a pre-script lecture, was training through injury, and I found it super interesting. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't mind, could you speak on that a little bit now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the big thing is like, I think there's this huge fear that people have surrounding injury. And like a lot of it is a lot of people's pain experience. The interesting thing too is a lot of people's pain experience isn't actually the pain that they're currently experiencing. Right. So when we look holistically at the pain experience that a person has, the first third of that is the pain that they're currently experiencing. The middle portion is the fear of what that pain could mean. And the third portion is the fear of future pain. So when we really kind of like pull back the layers on this, we start to realize that in actuality, only 35% of our pain experience is the pain that we're experiencing. So it's like, okay, those other things are just like psychological constructs that we can kind of just do away with. Because if you have a diagnosis, there's no fear behind what the pain could mean because you know what's wrong. And then if you know that if you rehab effectively, there's not going to be any fear of future pain because you're like, well, no, it's going to get better. So you do away with those other components of the pain experience. And then all you're left with is pain, which is like, okay, like it sucks and it's uncomfortable. And you might have to take some Advil or Tylenol, but like it's not that big of a deal. And I think having clients first understand that a lot of it is their psychological preoccupation with this concept of being injured more than the actual injury itself. And once you strip that away, rehabbing from it is pretty simple because it comes down to positionally desensitizing it, right? So if it hurts, get it to hurt less. And you're going to do that through slowly moving through that range of motion. You're going to do some kind of pump work to shuttle out damaged whatever, shuttle out waste products, and then shuttle in, fresh nutrients to the tissue. And then it's just about slowly grading the exposure up over time. And in actuality, you can do that pretty aggressively. Like it doesn't even have to be slowly graded. If you're on a timeline, like you can be pretty aggressive with it and you'll know if you're fucking yourself up, right? Like with my hamstring, the big thing that I knew that I was okay in my rehab, because I had to push back pretty aggressively, was that it didn't swell up more when I was doing my rehab. I was like, okay, I don't have any more bruising. It's not any worse. Mm-hmm. So even though maybe it was a 4 or a 5 out of 10 pain during the rep, it's probably not that big a deal. And I'm not making it worse. And my pain's better upon waking each day. It's getting more desensitized in these painful positions. So there's nothing wrong with it. And I think the beautiful thing that also happens when you have someone go through a rather significant injury and then come back from it is you start to realize that injuries aren't a big deal. You're like, oh, this isn't a big deal, right? It's not like especially with a soft tissue injury, it's not like a disc herniation where it's like, this is going to be months of pain. It's like, okay, you tore your hamstring. Good. You have other hamstrings. You'll be fine.
Yeah. It's like, my leg hurts. At least I'm not pissing myself when I bend over.
Yeah. And it's, and I think like demystifying that for clients and like something I always tell people too, I was like they, I always tell them, I'm like, if I like pulled my hamstring when I was playing football, I didn't like magically not get to play football. Like if you're slated to play, like you have to play. Mm-hmm. And you'll play fucked up. But for some reason in powerlifting, people think that it's like, dude, you're sitting in one position doing one movement. It's not particularly complex, right? Like you can do that a little bit fucked up and that's okay. And you're going to be fine. But just demystifying it for them and realizing like, dude, 50,000 years ago, you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger and you pull your hamstring. Are you just going to like stop running and get eaten? No, that would be stupid because we have a self-preservation instinct. You're going to keep running because you have other tissues that can take over for it, right? It's like we have other hamstrings and we have other adductors. And just seeing people come back from like very, very significant things like Ken, I can't remember what the heck his name is, but he was the guy, Ginger Achilles. He had like the bilateral quad tendon rupture, and then he squatted to meet PR 2 years to the day. That's like, I'm like, no one has any excuse now.
Yeah,
both of his knees. Yeah,
I think Kevy had a torn hamstring at that exact same meet from memory. I'm pretty sure we were in the warm up room because we were in the same flight, and we were like, oh, I hope this goes well.
No, dude. So he had because usually has Johnny wrap him, and Johnny was away for a weekend coaching in a comp, and he had someone else wrap him, and the dude just like he tore his hamstring. He just like reefed on his leg too hard, and he just like tore his hamstring down by the knee, and it like bruised up all good. And I was like, well, I mean, you don't really need it. Like, you're squatting in wraps, you know, like it's kind of making up fake elastic knee muscle and fake elastic hamstring. Like, you should be okay. And I was like, it's just going to hurt. He was like, okay. And then he went and did it, and he still squatted 350. So it's like,
yeah, Nick and I quite often talk about like the difference in mindset around powerlifters versus like other sports, and how people can frankly be snowflakes when it comes to powerlifting, even though you would expect them to be a little bit harder.
Yeah,
it's quite an interesting mix to see, you know, like whether it be in rugby or in football or whatever sport it might be. Like, guys can literally go off there with like an arm hanging on by like a few threads, and they're like, "I'm good to play. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine." And powerlifting, someone would be like, "My tooth hurts."
Dude, it's so bad. And my favorite is like Seth is the only person I know who's like seriously fucked himself up like a lot. And like, I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but his arms are a different length because he fractured the growth plate in one of his arms, and it's like 2 inches shorter. Yeah. And so that pec surgery that he had was because he kept tearing that pec because his arms were different. And like, he dislocated his shoulder so many times before he had surgery that he had to sleep with it taped to his side at night because otherwise it would just fall out of the socket. And I was like, okay, if he can do all of that in total, whatever it is, 950, 960, no one has any excuses now. And it's just like, I think a lot of it just comes down to, it's uncomfortable to experience pain. And it kind of like, when you get hurt, it kind of shows you like how much it actually means to you. Because if you're not soft, you're like, no, I'm going to fucking do this meet. I'm not bitch made. But if you're like kind of on the periphery and it's like, oh, this is just something fun that I do with my friends and we get to go lift heavy weights. And it's like, those are the people who like, they'll have an injury and drop out of the meet.
Yeah. So you mentioned rugby and how when you're injured in rugby, and I grew up playing rugby league, and Ben grew up playing basketball, and we often muse about the effects that training in a group and competing in a group and being part of something that's bigger than yourself has on your mindset and your ability to just do things that you probably wouldn't do if other people weren't depending on you to do your job. How do you think that kind of shaped your... I fucking hate the word mindset, because I feel like these like failed fitness coaches that have turned into either mindset coaches or business coaches have just bastardized the term. But how do you feel like growing up playing sport, and rugby in particular, how do you feel like that shaped your mentality around training and just getting shit done regardless of how you personally feel?
So I think the best thing that rugby taught me was because like I had played a little bit in high school, and then I played sevens, and then I was like, I just like I did my first year of football, and then I flunked out of school because I was a dumbass, and I was like, okay, they don't have the same academic requirements to play rugby as they do football, and so I just like emailed the rugby coach and was like, hey, can I play rugby? Like, I played on the football team. He was like this old English guy named Stuart Robinson. He's like, yeah, we'll have you. And I showed up to the first practice, and I'd conditioned pretty decently for it. And he was like, rugby's a game of attrition. And he's like, you got to be willing to suffer more than the other team, and that's how you win. And I was like, oh, fuck. And like the things that he did, because he's like, I mean, he's 77 now, 78. And the things that he did like fly in the face of contemporary sports science in terms of like what we should do. We would do like road work, you know, we do like 5K runs, 8K runs, just like dumb shit, just like beat us into the ground. But it definitely instilled this understanding of like, it's a game of attrition, and you just have to be willing to suffer longer than them. And if you get better at suffering than the other team, you know, you're 70 minutes into the game, you're going to be able to score when they can't. And then that got kind of amplified because I also played sevens. for the provincial team as well. And so like by the time I got to sevens, they were like, oh yeah, guess what? We just suffer all the time because sevens is way worse. And you don't just run, you sprint, and it's horrible. And I think like the thing that like I really prided myself on was like I would try to push the pace and I would try to always like bury my teammates because I was like, no, fuck you. Like I'm holding a fucking standard here. And, you know, I'd throw up every second week because I would just push myself too hard and fucking puke. But I think that carried over into powerlifting pretty comfortably because like I always tell my clients because, you know, sometimes people start with me and they're like, dude, this is a fucking lot, right? Like, you know, I'm sure you talked to, you know, the client we were talking about earlier was like, he was not used to the amount of intensity, frequency, volume that I prescribe. And I told him when he started, and I was like, listen, I'm never going to prescribe something for you that I wouldn't personally do. The problem with that is that I'm fucking insane. So I'm going to make you do some really hard shit. And he's like, fuck. And then I just call him soft and I make fun of his haircut. And then he's like, okay, fine, I'll fucking do it. And I think that's like, that was the biggest thing that it taught me is that like, at the end of the day, like if you don't quit and you keep pushing, it eventually turns in your favor.
Yep. So you've obviously spoken about like your time playing football, time playing rugby, time in powerlifting, and they sound like they've had pretty, you know, high levels of importance in your life. What are some things external to training that sort of drive you as an individual?
So, I mean, the big thing is like, so since we moved here December 26, 2022, and we went through the process of, so my wife's a chiropractor, and the process of getting relicensed in another country is fucking crazy. It is not a simple process. And so when we moved here, like I'm responsible for us, right? She can't work yet. She's not licensed. I'm responsible for us. And so, taking on a provider role and taking on like like if my shit's not sorted and my business isn't taken care of, like I'm okay with being broke and poor and eating noodles. I'm not okay with having that for my wife. And so, you know, pushing a lot harder than I even had conceptualized being able to from a business perspective, because I understood that it's like, I'm not like, I can deal with the consequences of my actions pretty well. And I'm okay with suffering. I didn't marry someone to put them through suffering. So, you know, that's been a huge driving force for me in terms of growing our business. And then also just like, you know, when you get married, you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, what do you do after you get married? Kids. You know, so making sure that we're taken care of from a personal perspective and making sure that our relationship is taken care of so that we can have kids in a healthy, you know, comfortable, safe environment. And that's been a huge thing for me because it's like, you know, for a long time, like I'm a little fucking unhinged and I was okay with just being crazy. But now it's like, guess what? You can't be crazy anymore. And you have to fix this because you're going to be responsible for not just your partner, but like little people. And I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta stop being a fucking idiot. And that's been very transformational for me, because nothing makes you grow up quite like being responsible for other people.
Yeah. You obviously mentioned a little bit earlier in the episode as well, like, you know, you get up on a Sunday, you have your coffee, you do your programs, and then you guys go to church. What sort of role has religion played in, like, have you been religious your entire life, or is this something that's like come up recently? And what sort of role does that play in your approach, both as a coach and as a human?
Yeah. So, totally random. Wasn't raised religious. Both of my parents were raised religious. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, and we didn't go to church at all. Like not even Christmas and Easter. Like we didn't go to church at all. And then when I started university, I like started out in like a history degree. And then one of my electives was like an Eastern traditions or Eastern religions course. And I was like, oh, this is like kind of interesting. And then I took another course that was like similar. And I was like, oh, this actually seems like it's more interesting than just regular history. And so I actually have a bachelor with specialization in religious studies. And my specialization is in Abrahamic faiths. So it's like Judaism, Christianity, Islam. But once again, still wasn't religious, didn't go to church, nothing. I was like, this is just an interesting thing to study in school because it's kind of like the genesis of human thought and its belief systems, which is interesting. And when my wife and I met, I wasn't religious at all. And she had separated from her prior partner and I had separated from my prior partner on the exact same day, which was like nuts. And she moved in to her apartment that she was in when we met. And the guy across the street was a pastor. I was like, oh, it's a little weird. And I like met him the first time and I was like, dude, this dude's good to go. Like, this is like super, super interesting. And like, I had a bunch of like leftover textbooks from school. And so like, I talked to him about stuff and I could talk to him about like pretty heavy theological stuff, which kind of tickled my kind of intellectual fancy. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then they had a house church and a Bible study. And so we started going to that. And we got more and more consistent with that. We go more and more often. And then I just started to see things start to like trend in a more positive direction. Right. So I was like, it's almost like, not to Andrew Huberman religion or faith, but I was like, okay, I've added this thing in and things are starting to go better than I can logically explain. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. And then we made the decision the week before we left Canada to get baptized because I'd never been baptized growing up. And we both got baptized together, which was like a very special experience. It was December in Canada, so it was snow on the ground and they rented a hot tub and did it in our backyard. It was hilarious. And we moved here and the church that we ended up going to here, it's called 1122. And like the dude, the pastor at the church is like a rock star in American Christianity. Like he's the guy that married, I don't know if you guys know who Tim Tebow is. Mm-hmm. So he married Tim Tebow and his wife. He's like the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just the more we went, the better our relationship got. The better our relationship got, the more we kind of leaned on that. And it's just been this like really positive, kind of overwhelming at times circumstance or situation because like there's been so many things that have happened, like even in us moving to the United States, right? Like we almost died in this huge snowstorm in upstate New York. 70 people were killed in this snowstorm. It was like a super crazy experience. By the grace of God, we got through it, right? And then like there were so many risks that we took to even get to America in the first place. And these like completely improbable circumstances, and they all worked out, and they kept working out. They kept working out. They kept working out. They kept working out. And the more that this happened, the harder it was for me as a person who is rational and who is logical to look at this and be like, no, this is just cosmic happenstance and this is just happening. And so, I mean, at this point, it's like, okay, God is real. He is working in my life and there's something going on here. And so I felt it necessary to kind of, draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. And the more that we've done that, the better our life has gotten, the better our faith has gotten, the better our marriage has gotten. And it's been really, really wonderful for me too, that, I'm pretty open with that faith. And I've had a fair few clients be like, hey, I don't know how to find God. What do I do? And then because our pastor at our church is literally like a rock star. And the crazy thing is like you go in person and it's like, it's a super cool experience. But they also have like this insane YouTube channel that's like watching a TV show, like super, super high production quality. And there was like a sermon that he had that was like literally like brought me to tears. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I always just like send my clients that sermon and they always have the same response, which is like, oh my gosh, like I'm crying. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's it. Like you got it. Like, now do you understand? And they're like, I understand. And I was like, well, the great thing is you don't even need to leave your house to go to church anymore. You can just go on the YouTube channel for that church, and every Sunday you can just watch it on your TV. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I talk to them about like getting a Bible, having a reading plan, things like that. And it seems to have really positively affected a fair few of my clients' lives.
Pretty amazing. You are pretty open about it, which I know Ben and I have spoken about it, and we find it I know I find it quite interesting because it's like, it's not something that you often hear about in the circles that the three of us kind of run in. Especially with the type of people that we interact with, the sport that we play, the music that we listen to. I mean, it's all very opposite to what you would think of a typical churchgoer, I guess.
Yeah, and it's been interesting too that like as we've gotten more devout in our faith and as we've grown in our faith, like people that I didn't even know were religious at all have turned out to be like super religious. And then I have this additional layer of complexity in my relationship with them because I find out that they're super religious. Like, super good buddy of mine, he owns a gym here called Pipe Hitters. His name's Skylar. And like, I had met him. I'd gone to his gym before, we trained together, and he's like a super funny dude, like, Army veteran, like super awesome. And then like I found out that he's also like the worship leader at his church. So he's like the ones that like plays guitar and sings all the songs and stuff. And I was like, wait, what? Because at the time, like I didn't even have that conceptualization that he went to church. Because it was like, he looks like us, right? He's like covered in tattoos. He's got hand tattoos. He was in the Army. He shoots guns. He listens to death metal. Like, this isn't a guy. And it's like, oh, not only does he go to church, he's the worship leader and he like sings the songs, and he's also good at singing. I'm like, dude, screw you. Like, you can't be good at all of this stuff.
Why are you so cool?
Dude, it sucks. And it's been interesting too, because I've had a fair few clients who were raised religious and then have kind of like trended away from it as they've gotten older. And then through me being a little bit more overt, I would say, with my faith, they've kind of like come back into the fold, and that's been very cool to see as well.
So we kind of have a few questions that we tend to like ask towards the end of our guest episodes. And there's one that I really want to ask now, kind of on the tail end of that. And that's like, if you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would probably say my grandfather. So, my dad's dad. So he ended up with Alzheimer's and died when I was quite young. But for all intents and purposes, was like a super, super interesting person, like fought in the Second World War, went to school for pre-med, became an engineer eventually, and then like was sent all over Canada to build a bunch of crazy stuff all over Canada, and was like a public servant his whole life, and had 5 kids, was a local church elder, and like had a crazy life by all accounts. And he, like, my dad talks about him like incessantly, like all the time. And they're always like, he was just kind of a smart aleck and a very, very smart person. But it's always just stories, right? And I've never been able to like, because by the time that I was old enough to interact with him, he already had Alzheimer's, so there's not really anything there. Yeah, I would probably say him.
Nice. We've had a few people that have sort of said that. I also have a very close relationship with my grandfather, so I always feel incredibly grateful when people do share that, when they're like, I never really got to get a chance, like had a chance to get to know him. Like especially over the last probably 5 years, I've gotten incredibly close with my grandfather. Whereas like growing up, we'd see them maybe once or twice a year, but for the better part of the last 5 years, I reckon it's, there haven't really been a whole lot of weeks when I haven't seen my grandfather, sort of 2 to 3 times a week. So like, I understand, like from my perspective, like I'm obviously incredibly grateful. So when I hear someone that's like, I never really had a chance to get to know him, but that's someone I would have dinner with, it always sort of like hits a pretty soft spot in my heart. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I always just say my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like the only person I really want to hang out with.
I totally get that. I fucking completely get that. Dude, after the age of 30, the amount of people that you want to hang out with for more than 20 minutes drops precipitously.
Yeah, it's like her, and then everyone else is just because I have to.
Yes.
On a bit of a side note, how did you meet your wife?
Do you want it? Okay, so this is hilarious because when we were at the pool today, she like scrolled back to our first Instagram message. It took her 25 minutes, but she did it. February 15th, 2021. The day before, on Valentine's Day, Squat U had an Instagram post of like love languages, but it was like gym love languages. It was stupid. It was not funny. And then I thought she was cute.
On bread.
And I was like, LMFAO, this is so funny. Ha 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 ha. Like not, you know what I mean? Not funny, dude. Nice entry. And then I was like, I thought it was so fucking slick. I was like, actually, like you can tell, like I go to clients on Instagram. So like, I like want to talk to you, but like I'm on, like all my clients bug me on Instagram. Like here's like my phone number. And then she was like, this fucking dumbass. And then she took the bait, and now we're married, and now we're having a family. So it worked.
That's one for the boys.
Yeah, for the boys.
Yeah.
So did you send the post to her? Is that what happened?
So it was on her Instagram story. Like she had reposted that.
She reshared
and then
it.
I responded being like, and it wasn't funny. I actually went and looked at the post. Not funny at all.
Nice.
Yeah, I love a good Instagram love story. That's how I met my wife as well.
Same.
I was managing a gym, and I knew who she was because I'd stalked her on Instagram before and followed and unfollowed her multiple times to try and get her attention. She never followed me back. So I gave up, and then 12 months later, she joined the gym that I was managing, and I got an email to say, Emma Carr has joined the gym, and I was like, oh, I wonder what she's up to. Went to her Instagram, noticed that the ex-boyfriend wasn't on the Instagram anymore. Perfect opportunity. Perfect timing because it was COVID and she had no other options to hang out with people. So it just worked out perfectly.
Dude, because you guys went nuts with COVID too. Like we did.
Yeah, there was lockdowns.
Like we were in lockdown pretty much
Okay.
on and off for nearly 2 years. We were the most lockdown like state in the world.
Dude, it was great. So in Canada, we had 5 in 2 years.
Yeah, we had
They
7
would,
or
like-
8.
Fucking chef's kiss.
And some of them were like,
I love it.
some of them were like fucking like 6 months long. It was ridiculous.
Dude, you know what's the crazy thing too is like thinking back on that, like it doesn't feel real. Like it feels like a fever dream.
Yeah.
I was like, what? That happened? Especially like now being in Florida, which could not be more opposite of Canada, because everyone here's like, we didn't close down. What are you talking about? And I was like, are you fucking gaslighting me? Yes, we did.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly in my favor because, like I said, I was running the gym. So I had access to the gym every day because I had to go there to work. So I was just DMing her. I was like, hey, I know you can't go to the gym. Do you want to come to my gym?
Dude, you're the fucking guy. That is brilliant.
And now we're married. So who won that battle?
Oh, yeah, dude. I didn't even ask her to be my girlfriend either. I just told her.
It's just like, yeah, by the way, this is happening now.
Yeah, she's like, what? And I was like, well, we've gone on dates.
Yeah,
You're dating me. I'm dating
you responded
you.
to my DMs. We're
You
together
responded to
now.
my DMs, and we're now together. And it was also the same when we got married. I didn't ask her. I just told her.
Yeah, you're like, babe, why aren't you wearing your ring? She's like, what ring? This one.
Yeah,
We're
dude, it was
engaged now.
great. Yeah, I was like, yeah, we're getting married. She's like, what? And I was like, well, we're getting married. I was like, you want to get married? We're getting married. And she's like, what the fuck? And I was like, I mean, you're not going to say no.
Yeah. Isn't gaslighting the best tool ever to like to level up? It's like, babe, remember last week when you said you wanted to get married? Don't you remember that? You definitely said it.
Yeah, dude, it works with clients. Works with clients great, right?
Yeah. That's coaching.
Yeah.
Just gaslighting the fuck
That is
out of
coaching
them.
because, oh, dude, it's probably the most effective. So lying, cheating, stealing, gaslighting, manipulation. That's like the 5 coaches toolkit, or 5 tools in a coach's toolkit.
Yeah. I agree. We need to amend that podcast that we did yesterday.
Yeah,
Those are the 5 rules.
yeah.
Cool. So, all right. So, one of the other things that we usually like to finish on, or we always finish on actually, is what we do is we get the previous guest to ask the next guest a question.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we stole that from another podcast.
did.
I just don't know which one.
It's the diary of a CEO.
So, whatever it is. I'm taking it. It's ours now. We're the only relevant podcast on the planet. So the previous guest would like to ask you, how different is your personality now to when you started coaching? In what way and how has coaching influenced that?
Oh, dude, I was such a fucking dickhead. I was such a shit cunt. Just, I'm 30 now. I started coaching like full time, probably 2017. Oh, dude, I was insufferable, right? Like fresh off like an 842 total. I was like 23 on a bunch of tests. The biggest dude at the gym. I was like, I'm the fucking shit. And then I'd have clients be like, oh, like I'm really struggling with my session. And I'd be like, you're a fucking pussy. You need to fucking lock in.
So
and understandably, not a lot of people renewed training. And then by the grace of God, 85% of my PT clients were women. Can't do that with women. And I really ended up, I'm much softer now and I'm much gentler now. And like my clients now understand that like coaching is a holistic experience and they can come to me with more than just like issues in training, because in actuality, if we have issues in our life and we're having problems with that affects training. So I kind of need to know that information. So I'm much less of an asshole. I'm still an asshole on the surface, but it's just a facade. It's not as bad as it used to be because it was holistic, right? But holistically an asshole before.
Yeah, and we kind of spoke about that a little bit at the start of the episode as well, and before the episode with, the persona that you put across on Instagram is, one, fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And two, serves a purpose, but from the stuff that I've seen from you off Instagram in the more like the back end of Prescript and the labs and stuff like that it's much different. And I found that super interesting, the juxtaposition of personalities that I saw. I was like, well, this is not at all what I was expecting.
It's a character, dude. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people, like I can act like that. And this is the worst part. I used to act like that all of the time. That used to just be me. And then people don't like being around people like that. So I had to kind of modify my personality. But the thing that like, and I am still kind of like, I'm a pretty goofy and ridiculous person to begin with. But there is a part of it where it's like Instagram just eats it up. And I'm like, well, I know how to play this character because I played that character for 24 years of my life. So I guess that's what I'll do.
Perfect. So off the back of that, what is a question that you would like to ask our next guest?
Okay. Do we know who the next guest is?
Nope. Well, you don't get to know.
I don't get to know?
No.
Okay.
It'll be a coach.
Oh, okay. Just out of curiosity, have you had any ghost stories or near-death experiences? Because I think that's just interesting. I always love asking people about that. And it's not coaching related. So, because all the questions are going to be like, how do you structure your business?
Funny, like I've actually had both a near-death experience and a ghost experience. So back when I was
lay it on me.
When I was like 19 or 20, like I was working construction and I was using a jackhammer to like get out some concrete from a hole we had to put like fence posts in. And I'm going along and I'm like, I smell burning. And then I looked down and the cord of the jackhammer had a small split in it and it essentially like caught on fire. And the current had gone from that back into the extension lead. It blew up the extension lead and blew up the power to the house rather than going into me, which would have killed me. So like I've just like dropped on the ground.
That's
I'm like shaking like crazy. My boss has come running around the corner to pretty much be like, what the fuck just happened? I've like thrown the jackhammer on the ground. He's like, dude, what happened? I'm like, the jackhammer has pretty much blown up. The cord's blown up and the house is blown up. I'm going home. And this is like 11 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, no, no, no. He's like, you need to like sit down. Like, I need to call an ambulance and make sure that like you're okay and you're not in shock. So like an ambulance rocks up. They're like, what happened? And I'm like, yeah. So like I nearly died. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. Like they checked me and they're like, no, like you're okay, but like it might be worth like going and seeing your doctor and maybe seeing a counselor, and like that's like some pretty heavy shit. I'm like, that's fine. The ghost story though, so couple of years ago, I used to live in the house that my great grandmother lived in when she moved out here from the UK. So my grandmother grew up in this house, like it had been like a generational house for us. And like you would open up the front door, you'd walk in, and the room on the right hand side, which at one point was like my room, at one point like my sister lived in that room, but it had also been the room my grandmother lived in when she was, the room my great grandmother had lived in when she was living there. And this was at the time that like my sister was living in that room, and like I think I was in like the converted garage out the back, and I've walked into the house, and I've like just out of the corner of my eye, I've looked into the room, and there was a mirror on the far wall which would reflect like a makeup table that my sister had on the inside that you couldn't see. And I've looked in there and I could see a woman in like a pale green like paisley dress suit sitting at the thing, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, okay, cool. Didn't really think anything of it, but like my grandmother had told me that my great grandmother had owned like a pale green like paisley suit as well. I'm like, well, that's fucking weird. And then there was another time where I was at home by myself, and I had like, this like back in the day when we all had the iPods still, and I had the iPod speakers like right up against the back of the kitchen bench, which is probably, I don't know, like 60, 70 centimeters deep. Like it was a big size kitchen bench, and it had like the grippy feet on it, so like it wouldn't slide on surfaces. Everyone's out of the house. I've got some music playing on there. It was like I can't remember what the artist was called, but pretty much they were like Muslim rap. So he's singing about like being a Muslim, going through airports and being like, judged based on the fact that he's Muslim. And it's then I'm in the other room, and next thing you know, I hear a big crash. iPod speakers are in the middle of the kitchen floor. I'm like, it's a bit strange. Like no one's home. Like none of the cats are in the house. So I pick it up and I put it back on. And the moment I put it back on there, bang, it goes flying off the wall again. I'm like, okay, something doesn't like this music. I'm going to not put that on, and I'm going to leave the fucking house.
That's fucking fantastic. You'll appreciate this, and I'll let you guys go. So when we moved here, it's a three bedroom apartment, and Jem, my wife, who has taste, decorated the rest of the house. And she's like, you can fucking decorate the office. I was like, okay. And there's a thrift shop that's actually run by the church that we go to called Hope's Closet, and they sell like paintings for cheap. And I go in, and there's this fucking badass painting of like a big, like 1800s tall ship, with all the masts and stuff. And I was like, dude, this thing fucks. This thing's cool shit. And I bought it. Literally, from the night that we brought it home until the night that we threw it in the fucking garbage, every single night, footsteps. Jem, at 3 or 4 separate occasions, saw someone in the office. I would come home. I would park out front, and I'd walk up the walkway to come in the door, and I would see the office light on, and then I would come in, and the office light would be off all of the time, and we would hear stuff, and we would see things, and I like to the point where things happened that were loud enough that I would come out and I thought that someone was in the house for 6 weeks.
Fuck.
And then I was like, it's this fucking painting. And I was like, this is some kind of fucking demonic entity or some kind of satanic shit. And I was like, fuck this painting. And then we threw it in the garbage. And dude, like we did all the prayers, and we smudged, and we did all that shit. And it literally, the moment that painting left the house, everything went back to normal.
So I've got one more story before we finish up. Is when I was born, the house that my folks were living in at the time was the one next door to my great grandmother. So kind of like full circle at one point. But the people that had lived in the house prior to us, the husband had a heart attack and died doing the dishes. So quite often, like, so dad would be out at work, mum would be at home with like my brother and myself, and we're like, under the age of like 2, whatever. And she would like be in like one of the rooms with us, and she would hear someone doing dishes, and she would come out, and like, so my dad's name's Andrew. She'd come out, she'd be like, "Oh, Andrew, like, I didn't know you were home." And she'd come home and the house was empty. But she would always hear someone doing dishes, and then she found out that the guy that had lived there prior had died doing the dishes.
Bro, I wish someone would do the dishes at my house.
Dude, you can. It's called a dishwasher. You can buy them at like Home Depot. They're fantastic. Actually, you know what? The funniest thing I've ever heard, and this is brilliant, and we'll leave on this. The best thing that you can do if you have the space is to buy 2 dishwashers, because you have a fucking clean dishwasher that has all the clean dishes. And then you take the dishes out and you fucking use them and you put them in the dirty dishwasher. And then when the clean dishwasher is empty and the dirty dishwasher is full, you do the dirty dishwasher, and then that becomes the clean dishwasher. And then the other one becomes the dirty dishwasher.
That's fucking genius.
And that seems like the dude.
Bro,
I was like, this.
You could make space because you don't even need cupboards anymore. You just house them in the dishwashers.
Dude, it literally, like, I was like, we need to do this. I was like, we have to do this now.
That's a fucking
Let's
great
demolish
idea.
our cupboards. Yeah.
Dude, I think it's a good idea.
That's the only takeaway I'm taking from this whole entire hour. So on that note, where can people find you, mate?
You can find me, Stu_Kodiak Barbell on Instagram. And I teach the barbell course for Prescript once a year. And that's it. Don't add me on Facebook. Don't do that.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. All right, man. I'm going to put your Instagram in the show notes, and we'll definitely have to run it back. I appreciate you jumping on with us.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Dude, 100%.
We might try and catch up after you meet, and you can give us a recap.
Yeah, dude. I'll fucking send it. I'm going to take so many fucking orals and go nuts.
Fuck yeah.
I can't wait. Good luck, man.
All right. See you guys.